Okay. All right. So we are live and I am now recording. So thanks everybody for coming tonight. My name is TK Kuegler. I'm managing partner at Wasabi Venture Stables. And I have been a handicapper. Well, the story in my family is that at about 1 year old, I went to the track for the first time. And on the very first race I ever saw, I picked the winner. So that's just family legend, if you will. So I don't know if that's 100% true or not, but any good legend is a good legend, is what I would say. So I'm going to stick with it and say that. But I've been a handicapper for a long time, and started Wasabi Venture Stables as a way of bringing lots of new fans in to be owners in a very low cost, very low risk way. And although tonight's not about Wasabi Venture Stables, so I'm not going to spend a lot of cycles on that, please check out our site and at wasabistables.com and learn about our program and some of the stuff that we're doing. But tonight is about handicapping a pick five. And so you might ask yourself, okay, TK, why are we listening to you? There's lots of handicappers in the world, and you're not even a professional handicapper. It's not like you do this for publications. I think that's all fair. And what I would tell you is that what I'm going to talk about tonight is a particular strategy that I have had a lot of luck with, especially around specifically the pick five. It can be used in the pick four and a pick six as well. Less exciting for the pick three when you hear about some of my strategies. I handicap primarily Maryland tracks. That's another thing, and I'll talk about that a little bit in my presentation. But I generally handicap tracks that I know. So Gulfstream a little bit when the winter comes along, and like I said, the Maryland tracks, Laurel or Pimlico, Timonium. This year alone, I have hit 17 pick fives. I looked up the stats today just to get a sense of how well I have done, or not well I've done at that, but 17. I am net on the pick, and the other thing is that my handicapping has gone to almost exclusively that I play pick fives. I'll dabble in some other stuff every once in a while that is not pick fives. Some tries, some exactas, things of those ilks. Occasionally a pick four and occasionally a pick six, but I bet almost exclusively pick fives now, and I'll explain why. But my handicapping this year, I am just under $22,000 positive on pick fives. So I don't know if I'm anything special on this, but that's a pretty good number for the handicappers on the line. They probably know that. So let's dig in. So first of all, I want to start with explaining what is a pick five. So it's pari-mutuel offering. Meaning normal North American betting there. It's a pari-mutuel offering at many tracks in the U.S. That's a key thing. Not every track offers a pick five. There are some jurisdictions, some states and some tracks that do not offer pick fives on thoroughbred racing. That number is dwindling. New York was one of the holdouts, and they now have started offering pick fives, even though sometimes they make them exclusive to New York residents. But generally speaking, at many of the tracks in the U.S., and what it is you have to pick 5 races in a row. You got to pick the winner of 5 races in a row. And there's often more than one pick five on an individual card. Laurel and Pimlico, for example, have an early pick five and a late pick five. Sometimes there's a carryover aspect to it. So what's a carryover? A carryover is when a bet is not fulfilled. One of these multi-race wagers is not fulfilled, meaning there was no winner. And they take a percentage of the prize pool, and they carry it over to the next racing day. Carryovers tend to happen a lot in pick fives and pick sixes. I've don't often hear of pick fours carrying over. I guess it's technically possible in some jurisdictions, but you don't see that too often. Pick fives, and not all pick fives have a carryover function. The early pick five in Maryland does not have a carryover. No matter what, they are going to pay out. If only 4 of 5 hit, they pay out. If there are multiple winners who pick a pick five, it pays out. So it's these are all things that you'll see carry in a carryover. Because of this rolling carryover aspect, sometimes the prize pools can get very large, and then you have a frenzy from all over the country, if not all over the world, where people are jumping into pick fives. You especially see that at places like Gulfstream or the West Coast tracks, Saratoga, places where there are big venues. You'll see the carryovers get very large, into the millions of dollars, as a matter of fact. So it's not unusual for pick fives and pick sixes to get that large. So why play a pick five? Generally, it has the lowest takeout of all the bets at a track. Many tracks have used this as a promotional for handicappers. The takeout is the amount of tax that gets taken out on the pool of bets that gets made. And the less that gets taken out by the track, that's their profit once again. The less that they take out, the more that gets split up amongst the winners. So from a handicapping perspective, the less takeout, the better life is. The other thing, and this second one is very, very important, at least to me personally. The programmatic betting is very limited in pick fives. What is programmatic betting? So believe it or not, in the United States, and even worse in other parts of the country, in the world, programmatic betting, meaning a computer making bets, is very common. By some estimates, as high as 70% of all win bets at some tracks are done by computers. Meaning somebody has created a black box computer program to look for anomalies in the betting and the odds, and to make bets. That's why you'll often see at the very, very last minute odds shifts so dramatically on win bets. That's why I don't not do it completely, but I rarely play win bets anymore. In some cases, the only place I will do win bets is on my own horses. I feel like I'm rooting for them then, even a little more than normal. So I'm not a big fan of programmatic betting. I don't like how it shifts the odds, so I stay away from it. The other thing we talked about, the payouts can be large, and in some ways, I think handicapping a pick five is easier than some other bets. And we'll talk a little bit about why I think that's easier. But in some ways, although a complicated bet, because you got to pick 5 winners, if you have just a little bit of a bankroll, in some ways it's an easier handicapping situation. I will want to mention also that this webinar is not meant for people who don't understand the beginnings of betting on horses. This is more of let's call this a 201 level class. We have 101 level classes that we've taught, and I'm happy to send the links for you to those if you ask. But generally speaking, this is an advanced class. So I'm not going to talk a lot about reading programs or how I determine which horses I'm going to bet on. But I will talk about strategies, and that's what this class is about. So how do you make a bet? If you do it online or you do it up at a window, you go to most pick fives are either 50 cents or $1. There are a few pick fives in the country that I believe are a $2 minimum bet. But generally speaking, they're 50 cents or $1. You can and should select more than one horse in any given race, and the amount is determined by a multiplier effect. So I did an example below. If there are 5 races, race 1 through 5, I pick 1 horse in number 1, 2 in number 2, 3 in number 3, 4 and 4, 5 and 5. You just multiply the number of combinations. So 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5. So if you do that math, 6, 24, 120, and it's $1 per bet, and that would be $120 total wager you've made. You basically bet 120 different combinations. That's an important. The multiplier effect is an important way for you to figure out what you're betting and how much you're betting. And once again, so if this was a 50-cent minimum wager, that would be a $60 total wager. If it was $2, it'd be $240. If you, instead of in race one that you chose 2 horses, let's say, now you have a 240 total wager. So the multiplier is your quick way of determining how much of your bankroll you're putting into play on any given one pick 5. And once again, it's the combinations that you're looking at there. So I'm just gonna, Gary Griffin came on. I'm just gonna mute you, Gary, because there's a little background noise. I'll turn you back on when it's time for questions. So just moving on, just some strategies here for you. So let's talk about my strategies. So the first one is to estimate the ratio of payout to wager. Now, this is a complete estimate. It's difficult. You can look at the prize pool and sort of take some estimates. But what I am looking at, it's very difficult to figure out because there are thousands and thousands of combinations of bets that people could have made on a particular 5-race segment. But what I am looking at is how big is the prize pool total, and how many long shots do I think may come in? And once I start looking at that, I'm looking and I start to figure out by that multiplier that we talked about before, I am looking for, do I have a shot at a 20-to-1 return on my bet? So going back to my example before, this is a $120 bet. For me to feel really good about it, I have to believe that I at least have a shot at $2,400. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean even if I hit it, I will get $2,400, because sometimes I'll have in there, and we'll talk about in a specific example coming up here. But I'll have combinations of short-priced and long-priced horses, but I'm hoping that the long shots hit so that number goes up. But if the short-priced hits, at least I'm still cashing a ticket. You don't want to throw out your handicapping. This is the difference. This is one of the key differences with these pick 5s and pick 6s is that when you handicap an individual race, you might look and say, oh, look at this horse. I think this horse is really going to win, but they are 7-5, or they're even money. I'm not going to make a win bet on an even money situation. I'm just not going to do that. But when you're doing a pick 5, if you believe the 7-5 horse has a really legitimate shot to win, you have to put that in your combination, because you can't throw out the whole combination just because the 7-5 comes in. Now, ideally, you have a 7-5 and you say, hey, this 19-1 or 7-1 or 8-1 horse has a legitimate shot at winning this race. I'm going to put them in the combination as well. And that the 7-5 horse hits, so be it. I'm still alive in the pick 5. I'm not dead, but I'm not. But if the other ones come in because I legitimately have given them a chance to win, then that's the way to do it. And we'll talk more about that in another slide or so. A lot of what you can bet is driven by your bankroll too. I understand that a lot of people are working off of a limited bankroll. I personally, most pick 5s that I do are bets that are under $100. When I am playing all by myself, most of my bets are under $100. And so that's, you saw the combinations before. That takes a little, and the reason I do that is one, I like to think about my handicapping, and it's part of the fun. Yes, I love winning money just like anybody else, but I do this as entertainment. I'm not trying to make a living at this. And because of that, I want to think about the work I'm doing, and I'd like to think every once in a while I do well at it. So so it's part of my exercise that I try to keep my individual tickets under $100. Does that mean I won't go over $100? No, that's not. I mean, if I believe that there is a legitimate 25 to 1 who is going to come through, and I think they have a legitimate shot, and that bumps up my combination number, then I'm going to throw it in there, because I know, going back to my 20 to 1 payouts, that's how I'm going to hit some of those large payouts. And sometimes more than 20 to 1 can happen there. If you're working and playing one of those big carryovers where you got $1 million or $500,000 in carryover, and it's going to be a really large prize pool, pull a bunch of friends together, syndicate. We do that all the time. We have a handicapping channel at Wasabi Venture Stables, and we will syndicate. We have a whole bunch of handicappers in there where we will, they're not only now horse owners, but they're handicappers too. Well, on a Saturday, we'll say, hey, I'm getting ready to play Gulfstream, or I'm getting ready to play, one of the New York tracks. Anybody want to throw $40 or $50 into the pool? I'll handicap it, or things like that. Get a bunch of your friends together, put together a ticket that's $400 or $500 because the prize pool is going to be big, and make a run at it. That's okay too. That's part of the fun. The last thing, and this is a key part of my strategy, and we'll talk about it more here, is that you almost always have to find a single. As a matter of fact, I will generally never play a pick 5 if I can't find a single. And what that means is I am looking for one of the 5 races, at least, where I am so confident that one of the horses is going to win that I single the horse. And that means I'm only making that a combination of 1. And then I layer in plausible long shots in other races. So Gary Quill, who's on the line, great handicapper, and I listen to him often with Maryland Tracks. Gary, I will sometimes message him and say, hey, I'm torn between in race 2 and race 4 looking for a single. And I'm wondering, which single should I choose? So I often do that. Gary's just messaging me to let me know I'm a poor soul if I listen to his handicap, and he's just being modest, friends. But I'm looking for a single, and once again, that goes back to I'm looking for that. I'm looking to hold down that ticket below, $100, maybe 120. But I'm looking to keep that ticket low. And by keeping the ticket low, you got to find a single, or the multiplier effect really eats you alive. Not every handicapper who plays pick 5s are believers in, hey, you got to find a single. Many are. Many who I've talked to believe in that. Others spray and pray. They're too deep everywhere. I don't believe that's a good way to hit a really impressive payout. And to do it consistently. I think if you're doing your handicapping work and you're a handicapper and you feel good about your handicapping skills in general, then I think in one given 5 horse segment you can find a single. Or, candidly, you should probably not play the pick 5. You don't have to play every pick 5. Every handicapper I ever know who is a great handicapper doesn't bet every race. Addictive gamblers bet every race. Good handicappers pick their spots. And a prime example was, I think it was Sunday, wasn't it, Gary? I think it was Sunday. I'm fairly certain it was Sunday, where I went back and forth and I messaged and said, here's my pick 5, but I'm not betting it because I don't believe in my single. And luckily, it didn't pay. I didn't bet it because the single didn't hit. As a matter of fact, I don't even think the single I was going to bet hit the board. So I just didn't believe in it. So I passed. And that's what good handicappers, I believe, do. They pick their spots. I think good gamblers do in general, but especially in horse racing. So let's jock into an example. This is a live, real example here. Gary's sending me a quick note. I'm just going to say, yep, it was Sunday. The pick 5 paid $67.50 or something like that. So it was all chalk, and I just didn't believe in it. And once again, I wouldn't even hit the $67.50 because I didn't have it. So, but this is an actual pick five I did on Saturday, 9/23. The winners are in red there. So this is the early pick five, so there was no carryover. I bet a $45 ticket, 90 combinations. I had 3, 2, by 3, by 5, by 1. That was the combination. So let's talk about a couple of the horses, and this is where some of my thinking and strategy comes in. So first of all, I got for those watching on the screen and can see me, I actually have some of the program in front of me. So as I was pulling out my old notes, because I was going to do this. What I do when I first start handicapping here, and once again, I'm not going to go into like how I read a form or any of that. We have great webinars on that. But what I do, the first I do is I go through when I'm going to do a pick five, and I put in every combination I possibly could. I put in every single combination that I possibly can believe can win. When I go through the form, I'm picking, so I might have up to 5 or 6 horses my first time through in every race. Sometimes I quickly get it down to 1 or 2, and that's fine, depending on the race. But I don't limit my scope. I literally don't limit my vision. And that's a key thing here is where it's different than like if you're trying to handicap an individual race. I am looking for any horse that I can possibly tell a story and believe that they could win the race in question. That's what I do first. And so I go through, and I might spend, an hour just doing that on a 5-race segment, maybe a little less than that, but, depending on the set of races and the tracks. And then I have my list, and I write the whole list out, and I have a whole combination. So in this case, I looked at my notes. I originally had 5 horses in race 1, 2 in race 2, 4 in race 3, 7 in race 4, and 2 in race 5. So then once I have my big list, and once again, this is a key difference than like when you're handicapping looking for a superfecta or a pick, or even a pick 3 or a try, or, a race that you want to run an exacta or a win place and show in or something. I'm looking for big combinations here. So then my next thing is I look at the races where I have the fewest horses selected, and I say, okay, now let's dig deeper on those 2 or 3 races in some cases where I have it down to 2 horses or even 3 horses, depending on the card. And I say, okay, in this given race, I actually put a ranking on them and say, this is the horse I feel most confident in this race of winning of these 3. And I kind of put a number next to them. And then I go through for the 2 or 3 races like that, and I weight those horses. Then, once I've done that narrowing down, then I go back and I look at those races again. And what I'm doing here, and what I'm telling you about, is I'm trying to get down to that single. I start with finding a single. If I can't possibly find a single in a set of 5 races, I generally won't play. So if I cannot get to a single and I feel confident about it, I just don't play the pick 5. And so as I'm narrowing the list down, then once I've got it down to, let's say, 2 races with 2 horses in each, where I believe, I look at the number 1 horse in each race and I say, which one of them do I feel more confident in? And which one can I feel good about singling? And that's what I do. And then I single one. Then I go back to my big master list and I do the multiplier. And if the multiplier comes in at that point, if the multiplier comes in at that 20-to-1 plausible ratio, I'm done. That's it. I've got my ticket and I don't spend any more time on it. And you might say, what, TK, you didn't narrow some of the races down where you had 6 or 7 horses. If the multiplier is within the bankroll of where I want to be, I don't need to narrow it down. That's why I say sometimes playing a pick 5 is easier than trying to pick one race. because I've already said I have no idea what I'm doing at race 4. In this combination that you see here, I didn't know what the heck I was doing in race 4. I really had no idea. I was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? I'm lost and befuddled here. And I don't feel good about any of them. But in this case, my combination was too high. So then I go back and I narrow it to get down to, in this case, I got down to a $45 ticket. There were a couple horses that I left out. This could have easily been a $70-some ticket, or maybe even 80 or something, 90-some dollars. I mean, it could have been, but I kind of narrowed it down to what you see here. The interesting thing here is if you look in race 3, there is a horse in race 3 that I would have singled. Race 3, even though I have 3 horses in there, was the other chance I was going to single. And I would have had the single here. A horse named Chocomount. It was a maiden race, so I was a little skeptical sometimes in maiden races. You're never sure of, runners that have only run once or twice and what the heck they're going to do. So I'm always a little cautious in maiden races. So sometimes I spray a little wider, and that's what I did here. But I like Chocomount. As a matter of fact, for the people listening, I was tempted to pick up the phone and tell us to look at claiming Chocomount. We didn't claim it. It won. So we probably won't claim it now. But it was a horse that I felt confident that if it didn't win, it would win the next time out. So anyway, that was the thing. And if you look at the math here, this is one where I was above the 20x payout. I felt good about it. Obviously, anybody feels good about winning. But what I felt good about was my handicapping here. My single was a short odds play. It was a heavy favorite. I think it went off, paid 280. So it was a pretty big, heavy favorite. So if you notice here, I had some not crazy long shots in here, but I had some 5-to-1s and some 7-to-1s in here. And what happened was in race, I think it's race 4, I hit with I think it was like 10-to-1, 11-to-1, something, 12-to-1, went off in that nature, in that range. And that, race 4 paid $25. And that's the key. Remember I said in race 4, I had no idea who was going to win the race. For my handicapping, I wasn't smart enough to figure out who was going to win that race. If I was playing it as an exacto or something, I wouldn't have hit it. If I was playing it as a try, I definitely would not have hit it. I wouldn't have picked the winner here if you would have put a gun to my head. But I sprayed and prayed, and I put 5 horses in. And I can get away with that with my bankroll because I had the single. And I put the homework in finding the single. So anyway, those were what I wanted to talk about tonight. And I hope you found the strategy overall interesting, and there's some stuff you can use there. I am going to, for those that may be somewhere loud, I'm going to unmute everyone so you can ask questions. Gary has been chatting on the chat function, but I'm actually going to unmute. So if you're somewhere loud and you want to turn yourself back into mute, you'll be able to do that. But right now, I unmuted everyone, and if you got any questions, I'm happy to answer, or thoughts that you want to add yourself.
Hey, TK, I stepped away early in your presentation.
Yes, sir.
But did you explain that the early pick 5 does not have a carryover?
Yes.
That if a bomb comes in, you might still have 4 out of 5.
That is correct. So, I mentioned about carryovers, but the early pick 5, which honestly is my favorite pick 5 to play. I'll play the late pick 5 too, but the early pick 5 at Laurel does not have a carryover, meaning I got lucky here, and I may have been one of the few tickets here where somebody had the 2 in race 4. But if a super long shot, some 99-to-1 hits, they will pay 4 out of 5. There is no carryover. So whatever is in the prize pool, minus 12.5%, because it's the industry low takeout, that's what they pay out, times, divided by the number of 4 place winners. So it's a very interesting bet that you don't even have to hit perfectly 5 out of 5 and still pay out. I love the early pick 5 with no carryover at Maryland tracks, and I believe Gulfstream has an early pick 5 with no carryover as well. But yeah, great point, Gary. Any other questions about anything I said? Thoughts? Hopefully you found it somewhat useful. Once again, my strategy is, it's not, in some ways it's not rocket science, but it's the devil's in the details here.
Actually, TK, Brian here. I got a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
The one is, for when you're singling, do you mainly try and find heavy price favorites, or does it not matter if it's 4-1, even if you like a 15-1 and you think it's a single, you'll single that 15-1, or because of the odds, do you kind of feel uncomfortable and feel like putting another horse in there?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I will tell you, I'm human like anybody else. Meaning when I look and I do, and once again, I do all of my initial, this is an important topic too that I left out. I do all of my initial handicapping without knowing what the odds are.
Smart.
I don't even know. I don't even look. When I do that big, broad, who could win this race, I don't want to be swayed by any type of odds in my thinking. I'm just looking for who could possibly win this race when I look at the form and the data that I have. So that's one. Then back to your question, then as I get closer in and then I start to look and start to narrow, then I look at the odds, because I'm making sure that, I have picked some that are longer shots that are not going to be, my single. But to your point about the single specifically, I'm at a point where in my handicapping where I try to be confident. If I handicapped and I believe the best horse is going off at 6-1, then I'm going to do it. I'll be alone on that bridge if that's what my own handicapping. I will tell you, I'm human like anybody else, so doubt creeps in my mind. But my process is my process on these, and so I try to be confident. Once again, doesn't mean after the fact when I've placed the bet and I'm in the middle of race 3 and my single, like in this case, was in race 4. Now that was your short odds play, but I can tell you I'm always nervous when I'm singling the last horse, the last race. So
I would be too.
Yeah, many a time, I get nervous. Nothing feels better than having like 6 of 7 horses in the last leg. That's. Nothing feels better than that. But anyway, hopefully that answered your question.
Oh, yeah. And actually is a perfect segue into my next question,
Yes,
which,
sir.
if you are singled the horse in that last leg, is concerning hedging. So one of my biggest, I think, flaws when I play multi-race bets is if I'm afraid of leaving a couple horses off in this race or a couple horses in this race in order to get the cost of the ticket down, when I'm spending maybe $5 to $10 on a single race, maybe in a win bet or with exotics, if you spread that out across 5 races, it's about $40. You might hit a couple of those. But when you're when you're playing a multi-race ticket, you're having to spend a lot more. And if one horse doesn't come in, your ticket's dead. So one of my flaws is sometimes if I leave a couple horses off, I'll try and hedge with a couple bets with those horses just in case they beat the horses that are on my ticket. Yeah. Do you have any way to tell me to stop doing that, or it's good in some situations, or how much should you limit that?
Yep, I think that's very key. The other thing to keep in mind, and it brings up a couple topics that I'm going to bring up actually, but the one problem with a multi-race ticket like a pick 5 is that you have to make a bet on a horse. You're betting before you see the horse in the paddock or before you get any other observations the day of a race. I can tell you, I had a pick 5 maybe a couple weeks ago, and it was at Laurel, and there was a horse that absolutely acted up in the paddock to the point where it was obvious the horse was not going to run well. But I was stuck. What could I do? I mean, it was in the middle of my ticket. So that is one of the problems of doing this is that you primarily are betting on form and your own knowledge. Now, given that I'm a horse owner, I have some cases I have background knowledge on some of the horses, that other people may not have that are not in the form. I use that to my advantage, of course, but generally speaking, the one thing I don't like about it is I get stuck, which comes to your point about hedging. That is the one place where I will hedge, where I will get and say, damn, you know what? I now know that my single in the race 5, I don't feel nearly as confident about it as I was before. For whatever reason, but it's only, and this is the key point, I only let that creep in when I know I got brand new data. I saw something with my own eyes or something, and in that case, I'll make a hedge. But other than that, I stay away from hedging altogether. If you did your homework and you believe in your handicapping, stay with your handicapping. And if you lose your ticket, then you lose your ticket. I mean, hell, I got a whole stack of loser tickets. It's probably about this big just from this year, But so I stick with what I believe in. Once again, except that I get when I get new data. The other thing that I don't like about pick 5s that I wanted to mention is because you have to make the bet so early. If there's a late scratch, that can cause havoc with your ticket. And what happens there, just what happens at most jurisdictions on multi-weight race wagers like this, if a horse late scratches, you get the odds favorite replacing it, the post time odds favorite. So whatever horse is favorite, that's who replaces your horse. Now sometimes that's good news. I've had that save me once or twice, where a post time favorite slipped in instead of a horse that I had. But it can also obviously mess you up too. But it's just, it is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it.
And I will say one other disadvantage, especially in early pick 5, is if, say, there's a track bias. Now, it's probably not likely to happen, but say if there is a track bias and you're already locked into that, yeah, you might be fine for the later pick 5. If you're playing an early pick 5 like that, all of a sudden, you'd include the speed horse in that race. That's another place you could hedge if something like that happens.
You got it. I put that into the bucket of you got new data, right? I mean, you can't sometimes, you can. Now, the good news is if you play tracks that you generally know what the bias has been. Now, that can obviously change on any given day. We all know that. But you generally have a good sense. We knew that Monmouth turf had a certain bias this year, all year, the whole season. And it never really changed. So if you play tracks, that's why the other thing, we had a long discussion at the private channels at Wasabi Stables the other day about handicapping tracks. There's a distinct benefit to doing and handicapping tracks. It's much more difficult I wouldn't think about handicapping Remington Park right now. And I don't know squat about the horses, the trainers, nothing. I know one jockey. That's about the extent of what I know at Remington Park. So you got to bet on what you know. Good questions, Brian.
Thanks, TK.
TK, talking about scratches, not gate scratches, but you explained how you do your strategy beforehand, you narrow everything down. Now it's race day, and the scratches come in.
Yep.
Do you go back and look at the horses that were scratched versus who made your ticket to determine? Because I get stuck with that a lot as I'm handicapping. I'm saying, oh, there's a lot of speed in this race, and then here come race day, horses I threw out because I thought they'd be caught up in a pace meltdown. 2 of the 3 are scratched, and now all of a sudden you get lone speed.
Yep, I absolutely do, Gary. Go back. For those exact situations, I go back to the scratches. That's why a late scratch can really screw you because you did everything right, and there's nothing you could do about it. That the one speed, that one of the 2 speed horses has just now dropped out. what can you do? It is what it is, and that's why it's called gambling. But I absolutely go back. My general thing is, and it depends if life gets in the way or not. But I handicap pre-scratch to get a general feel for the races, and I have a little set of notes that I keep in a little notebook as I'm doing it, and I will circle. I have a special circle that I put on horses that have a speed bias in my handicapping, and then I watch to see if that is impacted by scratches. So I absolutely go back and re-handicap. Especially the other thing that'll change, obviously, you handicap a race and all of a sudden they switch it from turf to dirt, and they do that at the last minute. That's notorious for happening this time of year. So so you got to be ready for that too. That all of those things impact how you put your ticket together. I will say the last thing on that turf to dirt, almost always, I can't tell you how many of my winning tickets are because it went from turf to dirt. All of a sudden it opens up like the Red Sea and you find the perfect single because of that. That I can't tell you the number of times that has happened this year, where that switch, where the weather caused the turf to races to move to dirt, and then all of a sudden with the right number of scratches and the right horses and the one pure dirt horse comes through, and I get to single them. So that's happened quite a few times for me.
Glad it works for somebody. That is the kiss of death for me. Whenever races come off the turf, I don't play.
Yeah, well, it's I love when it happens, but I can understand the frustration the other way too. Any other questions or thoughts from folks? Good.